Thankful to be, coming back home this week and to have the students back. Hopefully, give us some more added momentum in all these close games that we've, been experiencing, and draw, some energy from the crowd and things. So good to be home. Tough road stretch for our guys last week. Certainly did not like the way that we performed, and the level of toughness and physicality that we brought to the App State game. But I was very pleased with our response. We had a lot of hard conversation, tough film session that Friday in between the App and Marshall game. And I thought we really responded well, tweaked our lineup a little bit, and I thought the guys who got the opportunity to start stepped up, and the guys that, came off the bench responded the right way like we needed them to as good teammates. And so a lot of positives from our group in both of those games that, didn't necessarily result in the wins, but growth all the way around from us, and certainly had our chances at Marshall the other night, and got to do a better job again in the area of physicality and finishing our paint shots. And seems to be a theme with our group right now that we've got to find some real consistency with. But I thought we were better, defensively. In that game, and continuing to, minimize our mistakes and give ourselves an opportunity. But, did not, get one of those on the road. You certainly want to get both or get a split, and we missed that opportunity, missed one of those very narrowly. And so we got to make sure that we come back and respond the right way this week playing here at home.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the paper here, and you're 6-1 at home this year, but you've played a lot of road games here recently. I guess first off, kind of what's the difference other than like the home crowd behind you and things like that? Do you kind of feel like you're entering a stretch here where that's going to even out a little bit, and maybe you can kind of get things back on track in a more comfortable environment?
Yeah, I think so. Playing on the road is really tough. This league, credit to everybody in this league. I mean, they've done a tremendous job of, their game promotions, and every time we go on the road and we play, it's an awesome crowd. It's a terrific environment. Given the choice, I'd prefer that. I'd like to play in front of a lot of people. In my coaching career, I've coached in front of a small crowds enough times. I like to play in front of a rowdy crowd, and but it does certainly give you an added edge when those guys are cheering for you. We talked about the ODU game, what a difference that, our fans made, and that's without the students even being here. And as we, fought back in that second half, every basket that we made, the crowd got louder and louder. Every free throw that they shot, there was a lot more pressure, put on our opponent. And so, you can't bank on that, obviously, but it certainly does give you a little bit added excitement. And looking at the record that we've had over the years playing here, hopefully our guys can draw some confidence, coming off of the tough road losses last week, to get an opportunity to come and play at home.
That said, you got a team who's playing really well coming here on Thursday, and South Alabama does things a lot different than most teams in this conference. I think other than Texas State, everybody's shot at least 43s in their games against them. They seem to want people to take threes, and they have hold to a low percentage. What is so much difference about their zone that you just can't really get against them?
Well, it's tight. I mean, it is a very packed in, disruptive, even though they're not getting extended, type of zone, and it's hard to penetrate it. It's hard to get paint touches off of the pass. It's hard to get your big guys involved. It's hard to get paint touches off of the dribble consistently. You can get them, but you've got to do a good job of taking what they give you, and they force you to take a lot of threes. They force you to take a lot of shots, and so you've got to be in the right frame of mind. You got to say, hey, we're gonna shoot the right ones, because I think we got in some trouble last year. When we went down there and played them before Christmas, and we said, hey, we're going to generate a lot of twos, and we're not going to settle for threes like everybody who had played them at that point had done. And that was probably the wrong approach. Because we ended up turning the ball over a lot, and then we didn't finish our paint shots. And then when you do that, they have good floor balance within their zone where their guards are able to get out and attack. And so you've got to take what they give you. It's got to be a balance. You can't just stand and move the ball around the perimeter and expect to just chuck up a bunch of threes and win. But you've got to move the ball. You got to be down and ready. You've got to have just kind of a little bit of diversity as to what you run, because if you just get stagnant and put guys in the same spot, then they're going to get into a rhythm bumping within their zone. So you've got to put guys in different spots. You've got to challenge them. You got to, generate create a good mindset over the next couple of days before we play them that we're going to be aggressive. We are going to drive the ball. We're still going to be able to post it. But at the same time, when we do get, good inside out open threes that we're down and ready, that we're going to shoot them, we're going to rebound them. And that's a mindset that you have to develop over the next couple of days. But, give them credit. They're an incredible change-up pitch as to how they find success within our league, because nobody quite plays that way. Everybody plays some zone, including us this year. But nobody doubles down and does it quite like them. And they've found a lot of success of adjusting within games, opponent to opponent, with their zone and finding some consistent success with it.
And, you've got a guy in Justin who is really good in the high post, and they pretty much take that spot of the floor completely away. Are there other ways to try to get the ball underneath, to Gabe, or you maybe have to throw it over the top to somebody who's athletic, like Eddie or CD, or do you just have to kind of play their game?
It's a mixture, right? I think you can. I think again, it's not getting stagnant. It's finding holes in the zone. It's using the dribble. It's shortening passes. It's you can't just stand in one spot and move the ball and just let them get comfortable within their bumps. You got to make sure that they're not finding a rhythm. A guy bumps to the top of the key, his next bump needs to be to the slot, and then you got to make sure that as you're moving the ball, that you're moving behind the zone, making yourself available, meeting passes, playing good fundamental basketball against them. And so there are ways to do it. And then there's, obviously there's an array of sets and things that you can, try to generate some post-ups and some paint touches against the zone. Obviously, that's what they do. They're very good at taking those away, just like we would be in ball screen coverage and man-to-man. But yeah, you've got to spend enough time. I'm glad we're playing them on a Thursday instead of a quick turnaround on a Friday, because it gives you a couple extra days to, kind of create that mindset and put your guys in position to, just keep an attacking mindset and not get stagnant against them.
You mentioned trying to just find that consistency. Has it been frustrating at this point of the year of maybe sometimes you're taking that one step forward, then two steps back, or do you kind of view that in a different light where this is at?
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating, but I don't think it's for lack of effort or want to. I think our guys are giving us everything that they have. They're competing. They want to win. You can see that in the emotions in the locker room, right? This is a group of guys that they got to keep their belief, right? You look at the home games we played a week and a half ago. Obviously, Justin and Gabe were phenomenal, and our guards were not playing to the level that they were capable of, and we go on the road and it flips, right? And so, obviously, if you can get Cliff shooting the ball and Ike shooting it, and Preston Fowler and Brad, 8 assists and 0 turnovers in 2 road games, those are things that we had really been missing. But then our forwards, didn't play to the level that they're capable of. They had shown the week ahead of time, and so it's putting it all together, right? It's getting 4.5 guys to play, to their potential, and I think the margin for us is just that thin, right? If we're at 2.5 or 3 guys playing to their potential, then we open ourselves up to be on the wrong side of these close ball games like we've been. So we do need some guys to step up, be a little bit more consistent, and I think once we do that collectively, you could beat anybody in the league. But if not, you open yourselves up to it coming down to 1 or 2 possessions, and it puts just a lot of pressure on those margins.
Would you say consistency is maybe that common denominator of where these issues are maybe stemming from, or do you think that there's something else that could be worked on, that could be maybe that quick fix to get things back to where you want them to be?
Yeah, I think it's so much of it's the mentality, right? Where are these guys at mentally, and how are they going to respond, and learning from each other. Again, you got guys that didn't play well one week, they responded, played terrific the next, and then it flips, right? So, kind of drawing experience from each other to say, how did you respond the other day, right? How did you flip it? And, picking your teammates up. Nobody wants to play bad. Nobody wants to miss open threes. Nobody wants to miss layups. These guys are not thrilled with themselves when they do that as well, and neither are we, but they can't look over to the sideline and see, poor body language from the coaches, and we can't, play the blame game. I'm not going to step up here and say, yeah, we make 3 more layups, we win all these games. It's because the game comes down to so much more than that. I think when it comes to, shooting performances, whether it's from the perimeter or on the inside, the best route typically for us over the years has been to get the guys to focus on anything but that, right? We get them to really lock in defensively, focus on their defensive mistakes, maybe focusing on their offensive details, their setups, their screening, different things like that. And then we put a little bit of peer pressure on them, right? I think, perimeter shooting is just such a momentum thing, right? And so how do you create momentum within your gym, getting guys excited? Because the ball has life, it has energy to it, and it just doesn't create itself. And you can't wait to see the ball go in before it starts doing it. So just kind of building that up. And then same thing, guys got to say, hey, I'm going to make my layups, in contact, through contact. I'm going to make consecutive ones in practice for my teammates, and kind of just building up some of that peer pressure so that when you get to the games, you do realize and you have a little bit of confidence that you are able to do this for your teammates. And I think that's how you change it.
We talked a little bit about your freshman half of the game on Saturday, but kind of go into detail about Christian and Preston and their development and what you've seen out of those guys, because it seems like they're becoming more consistent right now.
They absolutely are. I tell you, the thing that stands out about both of those guys is they play extremely hard to be freshmen, right? I think that's usually the hardest part when you're bringing young guys in. Obviously, there's a size, there's a speed to the game, and a physicality, but they have to learn how to play hard. And I think they walked in the door with a very good baseline of that. They've increased it, and it was evident when they were on the court the other night. Preston just needs to continue to get confidence. I think he's making some of the same defensive mistakes that guys who are 2 and 3 years older than him are making out there. But I like the effort at which he brings and the intensity and how hard he plays, and he gives himself an opportunity to erase those mistakes. And then that's where his confidence comes with his shooting. Obviously, he can rebound the ball at an elite level, and that's something that we need, especially when you're not making shots. You do need a guy that can go in there and get you some extra possessions, and he's really changed the game and been able to do that. It's same thing with Christian. We talk about his defense, his presence, his shot blocking, and things like that, and rightfully so. But he's given us an added edge when he's really been locked in and increased his frequency and his intensity and going to the offensive glass as well, because those things, they give your team life. They give you extra possessions. They give you incredible confidence. But 2 freshmen that are really just improving at an incredible rate and deserving of the success that they're finding right now. And so proud of those guys and happy to see their roles continue to increase.
Last week a little bit about the offensive rebounds you've allowed, but I thought this past week you were very good on the offensive glass yourself. Is that an area where you feel like this team can be elite and is improving?
Absolutely. And then we're going to have to be, right? Because we've shown nights where we're a terrific shooting team, then we've shown nights where we're not. The one thing that can be consistent is your ability to get on that offensive glass. And, it's something that we track. It's something that we emphasize, we teach with those guys. Some guys do it better than others. And then it goes hand in hand with your transition defense. Obviously, the defensive numbers would tell you that if we can make teams play in the half court, our half court defense has made huge jumps over the last month. But so much of that has to do with your ability to, have quality offensive possessions, quality rebound attempts, and then set your defense from there. And this group's learning to do that. And I was pleased with the reflection in the offensive rebounding numbers for us.
As you speak about defensive confidence, is it more difficult as a coaching staff to employ that as it is opposed to offensive confidence? Because you see right away the results of offensive confidence, but maybe not so much on the defensive side of the ball.
It's a good question. I think the offensive confidence is probably a little bit more difficult. I think that when a player misses a shot, right, I think that lingers with them for a couple possessions inherently, or it can. Now, we really try to combat that. The very first team meeting I ever have with guys, we train them that they understand what the most important play in the game of basketball is, and that's the next play. It's a game of responses. You're not going to make every shot. The greatest shooter in the world is not going to even shoot 50% from the three. So how do you respond to the 60% of shots that you're missing and get it back for your teammates? So just trying to get them to really lock in on that. And keep their focus on the defensive side of the ball, because you're not always going to shoot it well. You're not always going to have a night where you get going and get shots, and you're not in control of how the other team defends you, but you are in control of the defensive intensity that you bring, how hard you play, erasing those mistakes, and then carrying over the things that we work on in our practices and shoot-arounds and scout specific for games. And I think it's easier to gain a little bit more confidence defensively than it is offensively.
Thank you for that perspective. When you go to the transfer portal and you pull out a player and you bring them to James Madison, sometimes you can look at the numbers and you have an anticipation about what you can expect. With Davis, he's right on par with what he's been doing shooting-wise throughout his career, 38% as of now, 38% coming in, so you can see that. What else is he doing for you on the floor right now?
He's quiet as kept. He's really increased his defensive intensity. We do something called defensive accounting. Every game, every point in a game is accounted for from a player perspective and an action, right? How many points we give up in transition, ball screens, post, one-on-one, whatever that may be, and then it's divided up amongst the guys as well. And so he's really increased that, and he wants to take on this identity to say, let me guard the other team's best player, and that's hard to do, especially as a shooter. And I think early on in the year, as we were really challenging him to do that, that was having a negative effect on some of his shooting. And now he's gotten in better shape. He's gotten his confidence going. He's learned just how hard it is to get open at this level, and he's learning the nuances of what he has to do that. But, man, he could shoot the ball and make it at an incredible clip. The other thing he's doing is he's really taking care of the ball. As I look at the stat sheet here, he's not turning it over for as high as his usage rate is, and he's doing a great job of playing off of his ability to be an elite shooter, as you mentioned, and driving the ball and finishing at the rim for a small guard. So those are things that I don't think he had really been able to showcase that he could do, the defensive side of the ball, the driving and playing off of his shot fake, that have had a big impact for us, and we need him to continue to increase those.
Because of the injury, you've been forced to play personnel a little differently, and Lewis versus Egbule, what's the difference in the game with those two?
Yeah, Kosei has done a masterful job of just being ready and bringing an edge and a toughness to our team. And I think we look at Paul. He's a very gifted ball screen player and can set guys up and really pass. Kosei's not quite at that level, but I think he does a really good job of getting the ball where it needs to be and not necessarily generating a ton of shots or a lot of assists, coming out of his hands. But he runs the team well. I think he gives us a different edge defensively, and I think that's just kind of been a little bit of a difference. And so I'm thankful he's been able to step up in Pilu's absence, because we certainly needed him to do that. And that's a hard thing to do when you go the first 2 months of the season and you barely play, but you stay ready, and that speaks a lot to him and his character and his toughness to be able to come in and impact our team right now, even though he wasn't necessarily in the rotation for a while.
We talked about last week, where he's a little down in scoring, but certainly do a lot of other things. Can you speak to his 2 games on the road this week? He got back to the scoring column a little more regularly.
He did, his scoring and even his assist, right? As we went into last week, he was 23 turnovers and 21 assists in conference play, which is, we had talked about is unacceptable for a point guard, especially with the usage that he has and how much the rest of the team needs him to kind of be that straw that stirs the drink and help them all play to their strengths. And he flipped it. Last week he had 8 assists and 0 turnovers in 2 games. That's not even counting the assist attempts that we keep up with. I think he had 10 of those, to where he made the right play, threw it to a guy, and he missed an open shot. That we're not going to penalize him for that. We're going to make sure that he understands that he's doing a great job. But I thought just the tempo, the intensity, he looked like he had more pop to him in the Marshall game. He handled pressure, which was something that I think had he and the rest of his teammates handled full court pressure and just ball pressure and guys getting up into your jersey at a high pickup point. better in the year, then we would have won a couple more of these games. And so I'm glad that it's finally clicking for him, and he's showing that he can run the team, get the ball where it needs to be, and then certainly he can score the ball as well, which we need him to do both of those things. And so much of his playmaking is going to be built off of his ability to score, and that's kind of how we have a lot of our play designs for him, to be a scorer first and then a facilitator second. So he's learning to be able to build off of his scoring mentality.
Anything else?
Yeah, Coach, whose points count the most? Like, who's the most important player you have to get going? At this point in the season, everyone's had a game where they've been the leading scorer, or like, the hot guy on the team, but like, and maybe it's more of an analytic question, but who's the most important person to get going? So if somebody's going to get 10 shots, who's the first person on this team that should be getting 10 shots?
Well, I think Justin. I mean, that's kind of where it comes from. We want to be able to establish him, and over the last 5 games, he's really struggled in the first half, and I think it's kind of flipped for him because he hasn't settled. He said, "Okay, I'm gonna drive the ball. I'm gonna get out in transition. I'm gonna command the ball in the post. I'm not gonna settle for, mid-range contested shots or contested rushed threes." I think going into conference play, Justin was shooting over 50% from 3, and since then he's not shot it as well. A lot of that's to do with him and rushing shots and understanding which ones that he needs to take, because he's obviously proven that he's a very good three-point shooter, but nobody can overcome poor shot selection, and that's something that we're working through with him. He's we talked about it earlier, maybe in December. It's a brand new role for him, right? He's the guy. He's the guy that's at the top of the scouting report, and he's going to demand a lot of attention from our opponents. And so the next step for you as a premier player is, how do you analyze the game? How do you study? Can you look at it and say, you know what, that wasn't a very good shot? How do I work to get a better one? And then understanding the flow of the game. I know at App State we had a possession where we had grinded them out. We got the ball 2-3 sides, got a great shot, had great floor balance. We didn't score it, but that's not what great execution always is. We come down and gave up a basket, and I said, all right, we're going to grind them out again, and we went one pass and then took a contested 3. Well, you can't do that, and so that's part of learning the flow of the game and then understanding your impact on the game as a premier player. But we need him to play well. We do, and that doesn't mean he's got to score 27 every night. He's put that Superman cape on many times, certainly in this building, and carried this team when other guys weren't, playing at their best. And so other guys are starting to play better around him, and so we need to, capture some consistency from them. But we need to get him into a rhythm, and he is a guy that we do try to establish early on to try to get him going, because he's such a mismatch problem and can, clearly impact the game in an incredible way, as he's been able to show, especially playing here at home.
What does he respond to the most? Is it the coaching during the game? Is it the film review between games?
Yeah, it's all of it, right? I think he probably responds the best to just spending some time with him. People always ask me, we do starting lineups, I always give everybody a hug and give them a specific message, and I won't always share what every message is, but it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all. It's specific to every guy that's starting. I tell him every day, man, have fun. I love you. That's it. And I think that's when he plays at his best, when he's comfortable, and he's having fun. He's confident, and that's when he's the best Justin McBride he can be.
Last one, Shane.
Obviously, there's been that point shaving scandal across basketball here recently, hit a lot of mid-major leagues, including this one. Are there any things that you do personally that maybe go above, the NCAA mandated stuff as far as gambling goes, where you just kind of address it with your teams?
Yeah, I would say we address it, often with the guys, and more in reference to just how disappointing that is, right? That you would take that upon yourself and, make a selfish decision that impacts your teammates. So we do have those conversations with guys, and it's a very sad thing. It's extremely sad. I think, we've made gambling, we've just made it so easy. I'll never forget, sports gambling wasn't available in Kentucky for a long time, and I've got buddies that I hang out with, and the moment that it became it became available, like watching college football on Saturday wasn't even fun anymore. They're all looking at their phone because the app is feeding them bets. And I'm like, guys, let's watch the game here. And they're like, hold on, I'm gonna see if this is a punt or not. And it's like, so, and then you put that in the hands of 18 to 22-year-olds who are completely addicted to their phones. That's just where it is culturally right now. They're all addicted to their phones, and you make it easy, and it's sad. It's a sad thing. It was very sad when we decided, I think in August, the NCAA came out and said, now student athletes and coaches can gamble on pro sports. And then finally, about 10 days later, everybody in college sports said, what are you doing? Don't do this. Like, do you realize what you're doing? And then they said, hold on, time out. We won't do this now. Thank you. But it's sad. It's really sad. I think we've idolized, we've made money and things like that an idol, and people chase it, and we've made it easier to chase that idol and to impact it. And it's very sad. And, I don't want that to happen to anybody. And you see all this happening with these coaches or these players. I would tell you this: there's not a coach in the country that knows when they're bringing in a player that they've done something like that at their last school. So to see people on social media criticize a coach and say, "I can't believe you brought that kid into your program," they don't know. What are you going to ask the kid? You know what he's going to say? "Oh, of course not, coach. I never gambled on anything." So you can't fault those guys for that. I don't fault the coaches that played kids. I don't at all. People were saying, well, the kid at Kennesaw State, he had a huge game the night before and he gets indicted the next day. Shame on Kennesaw State coaches. For what? They don't know. You know what I mean? And you gotta go with that. And so it's very sad. It's very sinful, what's happening. It really is. And it's disappointing because it's affecting the integrity of our game, and there's so many things that are affecting, college athletics in general that we could sit up here and talk about for hours. But we have those conversations. We talk about the disappointment, the selfishness, what it can do to your career, and we try to shed it in a light of be a great teammate, have a love for the game, not a love for money and things like that. So, but it's disappointing right now. It really is.